Hi friends! Remember last week when I said that really ridiculous thing? There's usually a clear winner before the state convention, so in service of not breaking our brains, let's just agree that the person with the most delegates at the end of the caucus wins the state, and we'll meet right back here if something changes. Well, it turns out I think I broke the caucus. No, I'm just kidding. It was already broken. Like, things got really confusing on Monday night, but because a promise is a promise, we're back here today to help try and explain what actually happened. Here's what we do know. This wasn't some conspiracy theory designed to help one campaign over another, or sow discourse into our political system, or distract us from the existence of the secret planet Nibiru. Nibiru? Doesn't matter. It's not a real planet. Which I guess is what they would say if they didn't want us to know it was a conspiracy theory. No, look, the thing about the caucus is that they were paper ballots and tons of witnesses. It's breakable, clearly, but it's not all that easily hackable. Now, you might already know what happened on Monday night, but just in case you don't, basically what happens is that caucus chairs were supposed to put the results of the caucus into an app, but remember that these are volunteers in these areas, so a lot of them had trouble downloading the app or getting logged into it. Finally, caucus chairs were told to just call in with the results, which is a good idea in theory, except for there were 1,861 different locations, so that's a lot of people calling in, and it led to incredibly long hold times, most over 90 minutes. Where do things stand now? The Iowa Democratic Party has turned in 100% of the results, but not everyone's willing to report a winner until they see more data. Because while the idea of the caucus is people standing in a corner and counting, people also fill out slips of paper that say who they're supporting in each alignment, aka each round of voting. So there are physical ballots, or pieces of paper I guess, that need to be counted, which is how we're able to get firm numbers from the caucus, even though it's so late in the game. Like I said, it's breakable, but not all that hackable. I also want to say that there wasn't any voter fraud. There's almost never any voter fraud. But there seems to be some rumor going around that there are 8 different counties in Iowa where the number of voter registrations is higher than the number of voting age eligible citizens in the county. Okay, that's fair. That's something that should be examined. So let's do that now. Those numbers look at active and inactive voters. If you're just looking at active voters, there's actually only one county in Iowa that has more registered voters than age-eligible voters. But that allegation actually looks at old data, a 5-year span that ended in 2018. Don't forget that people turn 18, they get older. You can't compare data like that without thinking about the growth rate of the counties. And since the group that lodged this allegation didn't release their methodology, we actually have no way of knowing how real their figures are. I've included a bunch of links in the description of this video, including one by the Brennan Center for Justice, which cites a bunch of judges and court cases who argue that in-person fraud is so rare, you could almost argue it doesn't exist, including Texas, who saw only one conviction and one guilty plea in a 20-year span of elections. Yes, obviously we should be vigilant about making sure that people aren't breaking laws, but let's also be responsible, because lodging erroneous allegations of voter fraud is dangerous. So yeah, lots of problems in Iowa, but I don't think voter fraud is one of them. In the meantime, candidates are headed off to New Hampshire, which runs a primary, not a caucus, so I don't know, that's what they're doing next. So does this mean the end of the caucus? I don't know, in all honesty, probably not. Iowa has been doing a caucus since they joined the Union in 1846. They tried a traditional primary in 1916, but due to low turnout and high costs, they went right back to the caucus in 1917. And, they actually didn't become the big deal they are now until 1972, when they moved their caucus day to so much earlier before everyone else. Now, I don't know if it was actually their intention to go first, but the Iowa Democratic Constitution has a clause written in it that requires 30 days between each party function so that as many people as possible can take part in it. So precinct caucuses, county conventions, congressional district convention, the state statutory convention, the state presidential convention, and the national convention, all 30 days from each other. Which means in 1972, when the Democratic National Convention was held in July, they had to do the math backwards, and the latest that they could possibly have their caucus was actually in January. So now they've got the first in the nation status, which James garners them a lot of attention and sort of has a snowball effect. Candidates need to do well in Iowa to help the rest of their campaign, so they pick up and move to the state. Then people are seeing the candidates, they're seeing press come in early, and turnout in caucuses actually increases. In 1968, 38,000 people participated in the caucus, and then in 1972, 60,000 people turned out. So now we've got Democrats in Iowa getting all this great press because their caucus happened so early, and Republicans want to get in on the action. Very fair. So in 1976, the parties worked together and decided that their caucuses would both happen on the same date. Then, to really lock that first-in-the-nation status down, they wrote legislation stating that the caucus could happen no later than the second Monday in February in even-numbered years. That is specific and good for them. Iowa is very proud of their first in the nation status. And even though this week we've seen a lot of calls to end the caucus, I really just don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, out of all the questions that still remain and everything happening in Iowa, here's what we kind of already figured out. Turnout this year was down, and that sucks. It was on par with 2016, which was already low because there was a presumptive nominee. Now, we don't have hard and fast numbers because everything kind of blew up on Monday. And as I said last week, the caucus is pretty exclusionary, so it's possible that states going forward might have a higher turnout. But even so, Iowa friends, New Hampshire friends, every other state friends, we have got to start showing up to this stuff. Decisions are made by people that are in the room. And if we're not showing up, decisions are being made for us. Why would we let this happen? We're the people. We're here to help.